I'm Jeff Cook,
And I'm TJ Wilson.
and this is Around the Circle.
I'm walking slowly, I'm taking my time. All I could talking is starting to rhyme. I'm letting go of lonely, letting go of strife. I just can't get enough of this beautiful life.
The Enneagram is a map of the human personality. It's a tool for navigating relationships. It creates language for what motivates us and helps us look at the way we look at everything else. Most importantly, the Enneagram's a mirror because sometimes you need help seeing yourself. My name is Jeff Cook. I'm a philosopher in Greeley, Colorado, and with me is TJ Wilson, businessman, lover of theology, and Enneagram ninja.
Hello.
My man,
Hey.
I heard that you recently went under the surgeon's knife, got all cut up, have fresh wounds on your right shoulder.
That's true. I do. Yeah. Thousands and thousands of tiny, fresh wounds.
Incredibly, it created a design. And so TJ is recently tattooed.
Yep. Hooray.
You can add that to your bio here at the up front behind businessman.
I mean, it's not my first tattoo. It's just the first one in a long time.
So I was really heartened by this. You didn't need to put my name on your shoulder. I think Joni or Fiona would have been way more appropriate. But just so you know, I was really, that was meaningful to me.
You were touched. Just a symbol of the longevity of our friendship. Yeah. I want you to know I'm not going anywhere. Joni and Fiona do not get that luxury.
TJ has a pair of eighth notes, a mom tattoo, and what do you call this gadget? It's
Called a portafilter.
yes.
Yeah. It's the handle thing that goes into an espresso machine that actually holds the espresso.
Artist and tradesman that you are.
Yeah. Wanted to do something interesting that I'd never seen before about my love of coffee. So here we go.
Speaking about getting hurt intentionally, not intentionally. Speaking about getting
This
hurt.
podcast is going to take a different turn.
We'll talk about the unintentional hurt that often comes out of relationships. I promised this last time that there are ways to deal with hurt in what seems to me healthy ways given the Enneagram. There's all sorts of advice I'm sure you could get on how to deal with relationships going wrong and things breaking. This is kind of our best take on what the Enneagram says, just given the whole system.
Right.
So this is by no means conclusive. I assume you could write a couple of books, maybe a whole section of books on relationships and relationships going badly. But I found as we were, prepping that this stuff came across to me as fresh and foundational.
Yeah.
Kind of give you some foundation from which to do some of the higher end stuff, but this will give you some base.
Right.
Well, let me give the quick setup and you can tell me what I miss on this one. We're talking about affect groups. This is one of the 4 sets of triads. You won't be able to follow if you don't listen to our first 2 episodes on this. So
Right.
please go back if you haven't already
Right.
to listen to how we connect. But we're going to talk about how we connect to the world. And sometimes when we connect to other people, we call that love or affection. Like we actually have some sort of intimacy or feelings of friendship, of togetherness that occur. And as human beings, we're made for those sorts of relationships. And I think we all intuitively know we're made for those sorts of relationships. And what TJ and I have tried to do is to show how our type influences how we connect with other people and what we want in response. The thing that we hit last time and are going to build on is sometimes the love and care that we are desirous of and seeking to get from another person isn't returned. There's like a lack. We really wanted to be cared for from this person in front of us, and it didn't happen. And lack is an important category. For some of us, we give gifts of strength or affection or wisdom in order to get love. For some of us, we create spaces where everybody feels a certain way. For some of us, we're pulling people into ideal situations, experiences. However we get love, sometimes it's not reciprocated and we feel the lack, like this person didn't connect to the thing that was really most important to me. And so that idea of lack is something we're going to keep coming back to. Anything to build on there or add there?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate that like this is not necessarily about romantic love. We're talking about any kind of connection you have to another person, and I think this can also be extended to some of the things that we love, like our cars and our jobs and our houses, whatever. Our pets, but it's also we need to remember that sometimes that lack happens because it's rejected. Like we offer these things, the space, the whatever it is we're offering, the idealism, we offer these, and the person across the table from us says no thanks. And sometimes it just kind of just circumstantially it just doesn't happen. So we're talking about rejection, but also any space where those things that we offer are not received. And that could be at someone else's fault, but it's not necessarily a fault situation. So
yep. What do you do in those spaces? The thing that hit us is pushing into the high side of our motive, our stance, and our stress number really give us some foundation and stability in these places because we can't control other people.
Right.
And you can't control whether or not somebody else loves you, cares for you, wants to be your friend, wants to talk to you anymore, etc.
Right.
Grounding is going to be finding what does it look like for me to be a healthy person in my type, according to my motive, my stance, and how do I use the tools available in stress to really get some stability. So that's where we're going.
Great.
Anything else by way of setup?
Yeah, I think we'll see a lot of really interesting things, and this is a good way to highlight that like people's needs are different. Some people are going to need to learn how to create better boundaries with the people that are not reciprocating their love and affection. That some people don't need to create better boundaries; they need to do something different. Some people need to lean in to their emotional space a little bit more, and like there is not a one size fits all answer to these questions, and especially given that the circumstances are always different, but our type responds to these places differently. So I'm excited to talk about how different these things look.
Bang. Would love to encourage you to get ready for just a barrage of Enneagram, because we're going to fly through a lot of stuff. But if you can at least like zero in on your type, on types of people that you care about, hopefully you'll catch, here's the rhythm, here's the flow. This is some worthwhile stuff worth grabbing hold of. So, but this may feel like a lot.
And of course, if you need to listen to it multiple times, we're never against that.
Helps us on the iTunes. By the way, while you're listening to this, you should go give us some stars and a review. I know we always save that for the end because we don't want anyone who has checked out at this point to give us a review, because that's a 3-star, 2-star guarantee.
If you don't like our intro.
One of the most grounding things, it seems to me, if you're just looking for one thing to get healthy with Enneagram stuff, it's pushing into the heart's message. We've talked about the heart's message a lot. Love to highlight it in the context of broken relationships. We're going to divide, again, the triads are 2, 5, 8, which are the relationists, 1s, 4s, and 7s, who are the idealists, and 3s, 6s, and 9s, who are pragmatists. So just to set that up, starting with 2s, 5s, and 8s, all of us need to hear a message from those in our lives. The unfortunate thing with broken relationships is that's the message we're not getting.
Right.
One of the really important things, it seems to me, in getting healthy in our center, in our motive, is finding a source for getting the heart's message. Many of us connect with God in these ways. Like we need to hear something from God that the whole world might blow up. All our relationships might fail. But for those who believe in God, God can be that constant source, that constant refuge. I don't know what that necessarily looks like in other spaces for other traditions, but finding this message for your type from a voice that's unassailable, that will always be there. Like, where are you getting this influx from someone who's honest, authentic, and can really speak with power this sort of message into your life? I don't know that there's a treasure more valuable than that for just being a healthy person.
Right. Yeah, we're it's easy for us to lean into the like God speaking in this message kind of thing, and there's a lot of other ways I think that people can access this. Like if you don't believe in God, that's fine. I think there's I've had a lot of let's say humanist friends who like this message needs to come from your internal core and speak to the part of you that actually processes the world. There's a lot of places, like any kind of like bigger than you kind of place where this message can come from. That's one of the great places to look for it. And then beyond that, there's also like finding the right people in your life to be able to communicate this message. We've talked about the heart's message in other podcasts, and I think there's a lot of good material there about like where and how to find people who will speak these kinds of messages to you. Really important.
And we really need to be critical of where those messages come from. This is one of the unfortunate sides to this, is if I'm getting this message from other human beings, a lot of times other human beings will fail. That's why I'm in this place of lack and hurt, you know?
Right.
Either collectively or individually. If like some of us may have thousands of followers on whatever media platform, we're part of, but those folks can turn on a dime,
Right.
Finding those sources or that source that's stable, super important. So here's the message that 2s, 5s, and 8s need to hear. 2s need to hear that they're loved and wanted. 5s need to hear that their needs are not a problem. And 8s need to hear that they're not going to be betrayed. What ends up emerging from that is a fruit. And it's we've talked about fruit in the past, but the fruit in terms of affect groups is going to be creating healthy relational boundaries for these 3 types.
Right.
If the 2 knows that they're loved and wanted, they can create healthy relational boundaries.
Right.
If the 5 knows their needs aren't a problem, they can create healthy relational boundaries. If 8s know they're not going to be betrayed, again, relational boundaries. This is what's most essential to 2s, 5s, and 8s as relationists. They're offering a gift. They often come to relationships expecting to be rejected. When rejected, they might strengthen that expectation. They might rev that sucker up to, nobody's going to care for me. Everybody's going to injure me. Nobody's going to seek to, meet my needs. But if you have that heart's message deep in your core, then you can actually navigate relationships and relational boundaries wisely.
Right. Yeah, this is. I think this will be true for all of the types, but that lack sort of pushes against and reinforces the opposite side of that heart's message, and so like relationists are expecting rejection when they experience what they interpret as rejection, which might be outright rejection. That's fine. But the experience of rejection in average to unhealthy space will essentially reinforce the idea that the opposite of their heart's message, that they will be betrayed, that they are not wanted around, that their needs are a problem. And this causes them to double down on that expectation that people are going to reject them. And so healthy relational boundaries, this is about learning where boundaries are appropriate and also leaning into where they're not necessarily appropriate. Like it's like healthy boundaries is the goal. So just plain boundaries, just putting up fences is actually reinforcing the unhealthy behavior. So learning where those boundaries need to come down is an important part, and learning where you have put up walls, put up boundaries in places where you need to figure out how to open up, to let other people in sometimes. That's good and important work. And when you experience that lack of love, when you experience the thing that you're offering is being rejected, it's easy to just slam a door shut. But there are healthier ways to be.
That's it. A lot of what we're going to see both in these three types and the other types is an invitation towards some kind of moderation.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone needs to embrace moderation on these fronts. Aristotle counted moderation as the chief among the virtues. There is something about not too much, not too little when it comes to relationships that we see all over the place.
Right.
But here it is. I'm going to shut people off completely is a truly unhealthy place to be.
Right.
Leads to isolation, as we talked about last time.
Right. Having a bad experience with an ex-girlfriend and deciding from there that you're going to swear off women, like that's not sustainable. It's probably a good way to get you through the next couple of months, but it's not sustainable in the long term. And learning how to create healthy boundaries, that's the goal.
Finding your value and the fact that you have unsurpassable worth in the eyes of that source needs to be a centerpiece, because from that you can remind yourself of your worth, remind yourself of your value, step into relationships can obviously be tricky,
right,
and painful,
right. And of course, like these three types are a good example of like the things that you are offering are not going to be accepted by everyone. And we have no expectation for you to open up to everyone. Eights, we are not saying that you have to be vulnerable to everyone. There are people in the world who want to take advantage of you. And it is good and right and healthy for you to have boundaries with those people. But there are some people in your life that perhaps your boundaries are a little too strong. And those boundaries exist because other people have done damage. And maybe you need to soften a little bit to the people that are in front of you, as opposed to just maintaining that whatever happened to me in the past is going to continue to happen. Same thing with 2s and 5s. There's not an expectation for you to open your sanctum, to open your arms to every single person who comes across your path. But learning how to open to the people that are important is good.
It's good. It's all moderation.
Yep.
Not too much, not too little.
Yep.
Where's the Goldilocks zone, as
Right.
it were?
Right.
1s, 4s, and 7 are idealists. When they lack, it's going to look like having their ideals for their relationships and experiences go unmet. This can invite frustration. The heart's message here is important again. For 1s, it's your good. For 4s, it's your seen. For 7s, it's you'll be provided for. It's again the case, finding that source of where 1s are you being reminded of your inherent goodness, quality. 4s, where are you being reminded that someone sees your value, worth, uniqueness in the world? And 7s, that finding that source for being able to live without fear of going without ends up just being huge towards being emotionally healthy. Because if you can't get here, you're always going to be on tilt. You're always going to be leaning too hard into, it's that 50-pound weight that will move you. It's like you're carrying a 50-pound weight. If you don't have, somebody telling you this stuff, you'll always push too hard towards being seen, towards proving that you're good, towards always trying to ensure provision. Not a healthy place to be.
Right.
This leads, and I'll set you up here, this leads towards a healthy frustration. Frustration isn't necessarily bad. When your ideals aren't met, there's going to be an emotional reaction to that of I really wished that this had happened or that I had had a different kind of experience and it didn't materialize. And so it's like you're handed all that energy. What do you do with that energy? It seems to me there's healthy ways to deal with frustration, but I'd love your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I agree. I think that frustration is not necessarily a terrible thing, and especially in the case of these idealists who have this. There's this vision of how things could be, how things should be, and I'm trying to sort of draw attention and reshape the world to this vision of what could be, what the idealistic version of the world that I see that apparently nobody else around me sees. Frustration comes in when that idealism is not met, which is often and sometimes always, because the world is imperfect and people are imperfect, and there's no chance that anyone is going to see everything about you because we can't read your thoughts. And there's going to be times when you experience stuff that you don't really want to go through, and learning how to have healthy frustration, I think, is about recognizing that there are some of those places where that frustration is appropriate, and not beating yourself up, not becoming more frustrated at the fact that you're frustrated is a good thing. Learning where that frustration is appropriate and letting go where it's not appropriate. There are some things that you can't fix. There are some people who are not interested in depth. There are some times when you have to sit in something unpleasant, and the frustration that you feel there, you might have to just let it go. But there are some times when the people around you are not doing what needs to be done, and there are some times when the person across the table refuses to connect with you in ways that you need, and there are sometimes when people are trying to hold you back or hold you to a certain standard, like we talk about sevens being the sort of entertainment monkey, and people get really upset when sevens start doing work because they're not fun anymore. And it's like, well, actually, they're just more balanced now. And being frustrated at your friends for not liking you doing work on yourself, that's a good thing. And it will propel you into recognizing that those people aren't your friends. They're friends with a dancing monkey. And you are bigger than that. And so learning where that frustration can be helpful, can be important, and can also draw people into the work that needs to get done. That's good frustration. Focusing on things that kind of don't matter to anyone else, that's not necessarily good frustration.
Ones, fours, and sevens can often be the creators in a culture. And as creators, you're putting your work out to be judged by the masses. You're stepping into the arena. That can be a very exposing place.
Right.
And in terms of relationships, it's creating relationships is a creation process, and being creative in terms of this is where we're going to go, or this is the world we're going to build. This is the experiences that I want to have. That's a exposing spot to be. I want to say that I don't remember who this quote is, but someone in essence said, the only way to avoid criticism is to say nothing, do nothing, and be nothing.
Yeah.
I think that's the word, I think, for idealists, or among the others. I think that's something that idealists need to hear. And frustration, in my mind, can be, in its healthiest way, something that moves the idealist elsewhere.
Yeah.
It's like, this didn't go well. You are feeling it now in your mind, heart, and gut, and you're adjusting,
Right.
Let's try something else.
Right.
A healthy frustration, it can be the case that this can become targeted. Those people didn't understand me. I'm sure ones, fours, and sevens can have that kind of reaction. I'm not sure if that's the right response, but there's certainly something, if you're pushing into the heart's message and reminding yourself of your value, then frustration can simply be an invitation to creating something new.
Right.
Don't sit in the same places of frustration. It's probably bad frustration if you're, frustrated. I think that's what frustration is meant to do, is to move you. Yeah.
I hope so.
In a healthy sense.
It should. In the healthy way, it should be a propellant, especially for these types that frustration so easily turns on itself. It turns on the user, if you will. And I can easily imagine ones getting frustrated at themselves being frustrated because they should be responding better to the people around them. And it's like, well, okay, sometimes you need to have a healthier perspective. And sometimes it's actually really good for you to be upset that other people can't see what you're trying to do. And same thing with Forts and Sevens.
It's why you need that foundation up front. Like if the one is convinced of their goodness ahead of anything that, anyone else might say, they can serve out of a place of strength,
right,
as opposed to us. I'm trying to create a better world in order to get your feedback and remind me that I have value.
Right.
Well, that's not a good place to be.
Nope.
And that's true of all the types.
Yeah. You're good before other people's feedback. Leaning into that helps put the frustration in the places it needs to be.
Yeah.
You're seen before other people say it out loud and express that they understand what you're saying. You're seen, you're known. And leaning into that produces healthy frustration about bad relationships.
I think it's one of the reasons that we think that self-confidence is attractive. It's actually because there's an energy there. When people are actually comfortable in their skins, they're not looking for their value from me in terms of the feedback that I'm going to offer.
Right. Right.
And that just kind of frees things up to flow a little looser, especially in relationships.
Yep.
369s, y'all are giving gifts, creating spaces. Sometimes those spaces that are meant to establish excellence, safety, and peace just aren't received. People jack up those spaces.
Come in with a big old can of spray paint and mess everything up. Not that spray paint is always bad, but this is the bad kind of graffiti.
The thing about 3, 6s, and 9s is, like the other types, in creating the space, you're not only creating the space for others, you're also creating the space for yourself.
Right.
So manufacturing the space is an artistic work. It's a building work. I'm establishing this for you and for me. This is a connecting work, but sometimes the connection doesn't happen. And that means here that the thing you valued most, the excellence, the peace, the safety, that gets thrown into confusion. Again, finding your heart's message prior to creating those spaces is just going to be essential. 9's presence matters. The 3 has unassailable value. 6's, you are enough. These are things that need to be like bedrock prior to creating the spaces, yeah?
Right. Right, because these speak to the kind of space that we're trying to create and actively work against the disruption of those spaces.
I'm idealistic in how I'm pitching this, that you got to get your foundation solid before you jump into everything else. But really, there is something about when this works best. It's just addressing your core, jumping back in with that foundation. That's a way to be healthy in relationships. There's, as we're talking, one of the things actually before we hit the fruit of 3, 6s, and 9s, the thing that's been hitting me is this is one of the reasons that most spiritual traditions have people doing some sort of morning routine, some sort of morning ritual. It's not prayer for prayer's sake. It's not like as somebody who's read the Bible a handful of times, reading through the Bible isn't necessarily going to do a lot of good for you. It's what you do with that. It's just getting through a book is getting through a book. Great. Put a check mark next to it.
Right.
No, you need to pull something from it.
Yeah.
And a lot of the people who are actually have their stuff together, what they're pulling out of their spiritual tradition is the heart's message for themselves, reminding themselves in different ways each day the thing that their heart needs to hear most. And that's what I see here.
Yeah.
If 9s know that their presence already matters in the world, they can disconnect from toxic relationships and not worry about it.
Right. So this one, the pragmatist, these three types, their energy is their affect, if you will, is directed at both all of their internal space and the external world around them. So the relationists, their energy is directed outward. The idealists, their energy is directed inward. And for these two types, it's split. Like we 3, 6s, and 9s are sort of pushing the energy out in both directions. And disconnection for us, it means a disconnection from the thing that we're sort of expecting, and also a disconnection from the external holding as well. So speaking specifically for 9s, like when that idea of our presence matters, when this seeps in, the disconnection that comes from that, the ability to disconnect in healthy ways, it means disconnecting from conflict. It means disconnecting from needing everything to be the way that you think it should be, like that peaceful space. It also means disconnecting from people that cause disruption in your space. So, like, because it's so hard for us to face conflict, part of that is that we don't want to enter into spaces where that conflict might happen, because we just really don't want to have that conflict. And the disconnection includes disconnecting from that concern about facing that conflict. Like, this is something that I need to enter into in order to create the peace that I'm seeking. And if I don't enter into it, then that peace won't happen. And so disconnecting from the idea that doing nothing will create peace, like disconnecting from the potential harm that I might be causing by entering into this conflict, actually allows me to create the peace that I'm looking for.
Right. Plays out in the other two types. You want to play that out?
Yep.
3s and 6s are likewise going to have to, have that moderation. When do you disconnect? When do you stay attached? There's got to be wisdom there.
Right. For 3s, like disconnecting from that need to be praised, that need to be seen as excellent, and to be told that you're excellent. It means it frees you up to just be good at what you're doing. And when the space that you're trying to create is one where everyone succeeds, and you find that people are in that space not wanting to succeed, the fact that they don't want that does not mean that you aren't good at creating that space. The healthy disconnection allows you to detach from the way that other people influence your own vision of yourself. And then 2 for 6s, this disconnection is a little bit clearer, I think, with 6s, because it means that the disconnection allows you to stop looking outside for your own validation, to stop needing that support from other people, like especially people who are abusing it. It's so easy for 6s to take abuse, to take people taking advantage of them, to be the silent the silent worker who gets trampled on all the time. And when 6s lean into this idea that they are enough, when they build that in and really focus on the things that they can and do well, they can recognize where they need to separate themselves from other people, from people who are causing them harm, from people who are not creating safe spaces for the people around them. And the counterphobic 6 comes out in this way. It can be really healthy and it can be really unhealthy, but I think that the healthy aspects of that counterphobic, like recognizing that authority is not doing what it's supposed to do. The healthy disconnection also means that you can speak up for others in that way.
Bang. That's a good word on that. Thing that hit me, there's the moderation that comes here in terms of dealing with relational boundaries, disconnection, and frustration. Moderation, as we've said, just primary. Well, how do you know what counts as moderation? Well, you need to be wise on these fronts. You need to really engage your mind and thoughtfully look at this. But it's not enough to simply know how to moderate. You also have to have the courage to do it.
Right.
And those three virtues are often called the cardinal virtues. They're central to the Greek tradition. You know, when moderation, wisdom, and courage reign in us, Plato says we experience like everything whole. Everything is as it should be. And for Plato, that word is justice. But it's justice in the individual. And just as we're talking, I'm like, hey, it's just right here. It's right here. So anyway, needed to get my nerdy side note in.
Yeah. Notice too that those three virtues also feed each other.
And they do.
Yeah.
Yep. Bang. Well, that's motive then. Like, what does it look like to deal with lack? First, just getting your center healthy. Like you're taking in the world. Get how you're taking in the world healthy. The second step would be how you respond to the world, which in Enneagram language is stance. This was the material that I got most excited about in terms of the whole study of affect. So hopefully it'll come out well. But it seems to me that when we engage others from that spot of lack, you know, somebody hasn't received our gift, our ideals, or the spaces we create, that's going to produce in us some kind of feeling. And this feeling really needs to get named. For 1s, 4s, and 7s, there's something like a feeling of abandonment, or that because somebody hasn't come along with me, now I'm isolated and alone. And that plays out in how 1s, 4s, and 7s can act in the world.
Right.
For 2s, 5s, and 8s, they also are going to have a feeling. For 8s, it's like somebody didn't receive my strength, or even like pissed on my strength, or, you know, like dismissed my strength. And so I'm just going to cut them off. For 5s, this person didn't receive my wisdom. That's going to hurt. And it's going to materialize much more like something like apathy. Like, well, of course, now I don't care about them. All of this is coming from that spot of just, you know, expecting rejection. It's like, now that I expect rejection, what am I going to do to the person, you know, who I was in relationship with and it went badly? And for 2s, they get emotionally, you know, kind of reactionary. To go full circle, the feelings that emerge when there's lack are really important. And we kind of hinted at already for 3, 6s, and 9s that they're going to dread engaging their repressed center, as you were talking about. 9s are going to dread getting involved in acting in bad relationships. And 3s are going to dread engaging their emotions and the emotions of others. And 6s have a hard time getting their heads around all this. Right. So that's just quickly going around the circle there. But so here would be the big idea with going towards the high side of stance. In order to get to the high side of stance, you have to elevate your repressed center. Yeah. This is something we speak extensively about. If you go to our series where we talk through the steps of the Enneagram, one of the first things we say, this is the work that really gets you in a stable position, is just elevating your repressed center. So I'm going to assume if you haven't listened to that material, you should. But for 9s, 4s, and 5s, getting healthy here means engaging their bodies. Yep. For 1s, 2s, and 6s, getting healthy here means engaging their minds. And for 3, 7s, and 8s, it means engaging their feelings. This is what health looks like in engaging the world for those types. And so when we have relationships that go badly, we have to re-engage the world. What does it look like to re-engage the world in ways that are healthy? Well, it's probably going to look like going back to this place. I need to really, for 1s, 2s, and 6s, get my head around myself, my place in the world, how things have gone. I need to do productive thinking about those things and not just spin out of control.
Right.
For 3, 7s, and 8s, it means your emotions have to be depthy. You have to have lots of different language for all of the feelings. It can't just be anger, 8s. It can't just be positive, 7s. It's got to be insightful, and it's got to have some color to it. And you need to be able to talk about your inner life in ways that are detailed and not just flat. And for 4s, 5s, and 9s, you need to get out of your imagination and mind and get into your body and acting again. And this is where health's at.
Yeah.
Thoughts on elevating repressed centers, and then we'll talk about what I love here, the worst case feelings that come from broken relationships.
Yeah, I think that like we say this all the time. There's a good mantra that like if you're only going to do one thing with Enneagram work for the rest of your life, the work that you're going to do is stance work, and you can be doing it for the rest of your life. And elevating that repressed center is this is something that will help you across the board. And when you combine it with affect, when you think about what happens when you have some sort of lack of relational connection, elevating that repressed center, it might solve the problem. But most importantly, it will actually it will help you develop a healthier response. And this is it's across the board. It'll help you develop healthier responses to every single thing in your life, but particularly with lack in relationships. It helps balance, it helps bring forward some of the things that you're lacking, some of the ways that you are struggling to understand or do the right thing or feel the things that you're supposed to be feeling, because that repressed center is not doing the amount of work it's supposed to be doing.
When how you re-engage the world comes out of that space, you've elevated your repressed center. That's a place of balance.
Right.
Another word for balance is moderation.
Hey.
That just is going to govern a lot of playing out what does it look like to be healthy in the world. Here's the thing. So to go back to each of the groups, 2s, 5s, and 8s have a gift that has not been accepted. Strength, their love, their wisdom. It's going to produce a feeling in them. That feeling is going to color a lot of their relationships. This is going to be true for all the types, but 2s, 5s, and 8s, let's sit with them for a minute. For 2s are going to have a move take place inside of them where they bail thinking and elevate their intelligence center. It's all emotion now. Mm-hmm. In fact, it's probably emotion in action. And that creates, when relationship has gone bad, a reactionary feeling inside of 2s. You want to talk about 2s being reactive and their repressor?
Yeah, I think that like that idea that like I am offering you this help. I'm offering you this thing that I have, this care, this genuine relational connection that has to do with like what you need, and you don't receive that, then the mind shuts down and it becomes they spin out they sort of get stuck in what the feeling space is, and that like this is where the sort of martyrdom comes out. It's you're rejecting me because of who I am, and therefore you don't love me, and it comes out in these weird sort of manipulative kind of ways. But like the healthy response, bringing that feeling space back in, that it doesn't get rid of that reactionary attitude, but it does temper it with some wisdom, some understanding, and like maybe somebody is not receiving your help because they actually don't need it, but it doesn't mean they don't love you. And understanding that your response, that initial thing that comes out of you is reactionary, helps you understand that like that's part of where the breakdown happens in your relationships.
I suppose even if they do tell you they don't love you, one of the better things to do would be to push into your thinking center. Like, get your head around that in terms of how then do you navigate a really painful situation. But unhealthy 2s can become unbalanced, and it can just be all emotion and action at that point.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And you don't have the ability to create healthy boundaries.
Right. And there it is. The engaging thinking is going to allow you to push into those boundaries in worthy ways. For 5s, you'll notice being rejected or having their gift unaccepted means they're going to disengage from their body, and that's the place that we see with 5s and apathy. Mm-hmm. They can move into a very mental space that's about their emotions, but they're no longer engaging the world physically.
Right. It's that the apathy that exists there it has so much to do with the five's natural bent towards disconnection anyway, and they, in stepping away and saying I'm not going to do anything about this because I don't care anymore, like it's further separates, it further isolates. Like all of these things are isolating things, and when fives are able to do the work of sort of bringing up that repressed center, the apathy can actually be pivoted, I can't think of the word I'm looking for, be sort of transformed into an understanding, the disconnection that fives naturally have anyway. When lack happens, the apathy isn't necessarily damaging. Like it has a lot to do with creating better boundaries and not caring about these things as opposed to not caring about anything. Like fives
Right.
It's so much easier for fives to be nihilistic and not care about anything. And healthy apathy is not caring about things that you shouldn't care about and being okay with that.
Yeah. I assume it comes from pathos, which would have to do with just getting rid of all of your emotions. You need some emotions. That would be the balancing.
Right. And it also it serves to recognize that if you have apathy, that means that you cared in the first place.
Yeah.
Like you can't hate things that you don't care about, you know?
I think that's the move. It's the five needs to engage the relational investments that they know have been really strong and valuable. Push into that space, maybe. I'm shooting from the hip here, but it's not no relationships. It's not all the relationships. Again, there's balance, but you have to invest your energy into the things, into relationships that matter. Well, let me think about that. That's hard.
Well,
Because the five could find themselves in a place of real relational brokenness. And so
Right.
what do you do there?
Right. But I think that like the repressed center being the body, that doing space, like there's work to be done here. You can't just step out of your whole life.
Yeah.
And the balance that's
There you
needed
go.
in this is like there are places where apathy won't work, and there are some places where, you know, not caring about things that aren't important is fine. And there's other stuff that needs your presence, that needs your hands to do the work.
Yeah. Correct. Yeah. Once you've created the healthy relational boundaries, then you need to push into action with the relationships that will work
Right.
and do the work on yourself so that you can be the sort of person that's lovable.
Right.
Bang. Eights. You'll notice with eights, they when the gift isn't accepted, there will be the temptation to just get rid of all feelings, and the relational vengeance that can come out of eights, or just the cutting people off side of eights can manifest here.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily the best move. You got
Right.
thoughts on eights here?
Right. That combining that lack with the repressed feeling center, it's really easy to not care about other people and to not care about how your behavior affects other people, which is something that eights struggle with. And the like just cutting people off because they hurt you once, and maybe you need to learn how to create better, healthier boundaries with people, which sometimes means not so much boundaries. And you need to learn how to open up windows into the wall that you've built, and like just building the wall higher is not a sustainable posture toward the world.
Right. I love that image of healthy response is going to be caring about the feelings of others, and caring about your own feelings and what, you know, the damage that perhaps may have been experienced in a relationship that didn't go well.
Right.
It's a vulnerable place. It's a real healthy place to do that surgery, do that work so that you can re-engage your heart and the hearts of others.
Right.
Those eights that can get there real healthy folks. As we're talking through 2s, 5s, and 8s, one of the things, as idealist that I am, I super respect and I'm always like not mystified by, but like I feel like these types can do relationship better than I do because of the boundaries that they put forward. Like if you're in the circle in which a 2, 5, or 8 actually give their authentic self, not just from a distance, here's my strength, here's my wisdom, here's my how I can be helpful, but like truly opening, like those are some of the relationships I really treasure most because I know how much it takes for them, those types to get to that spot, and that, I'm honored to be invited into those spaces.
Right. Well, and I also want to point out, like, one of the things that sticks out to me when we look at this list is that, like, the pairing of the energy, the directional energy, is really apparent to me as well. Because, like, these 3 types, I really like the word reactionary here about their feeling, their response is it has to do with something out there. Mm-hmm. It's all reactionary toward the other people. The energy is toward the other. Even the apathy is saying, I'm not going to care about you anymore. And it's directed outward.
Bang. Last one's 1s, 4s, and 7s. Same story of either getting their mind, body, or feelings around the problem. I feel like there's a word here is abandonment for me, that when creating the ideals, when trying to pull others into that world that you envision, sometimes people don't go, and then all of a sudden you're like, come on, it's over here. Come on. You look around and then you're all by yourself.
Right.
And what do you do in that space? So starting with 1s, just engaging your mind in that space is probably going to be helpful. Right. That's both self-awareness, and I don't want to push too hard on this front because it can be the place 1s do self-harm, but perhaps asking, like doing an inventory of why is it the case that people aren't following me into this adventure without being overly self-critical. Man, that's a balancing act, but
right.
Getting your head around that would be valuable, I think.
Yeah, because that sense of abandonment is really fed by that internal critic. Like that issue is, of course I'm alone because I'm not good enough to convince other people to follow me, and
right.
I'm the only one who sees these things that need to be fixed, and the isolation that comes from that inability to think, to process, and to prioritize information, and to see, like, because of this idealism, it's also an inability to accept other people's perspective in a way that's healthy and productive, and that, like, the work of shoring up that repressed center is like it just gives you space to have more, to have a broader understanding, to be more inclusive for other people's thoughts and the way other people see, and to say that maybe other people didn't care about the thing that you care about, and that's okay. It doesn't make them bad, and it doesn't make you bad.
Right.
And it doesn't mean you're alone. It just means that you care more about this thing that other people don't care about.
I suppose the moderation comes back into play here for all 3 of the idealists. There is a place of, like, 1s, 4s, and 7s can go extreme with their ideals, and other people just can't possibly keep up.
Right.
And relational connection is going to have to take that into account.
Yeah.
And wisely understanding how to moderate your ideals into packages that are palatable, that others can accept, that aren't too much behavior, that those sorts need to embrace. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because the idealistic worldview is not firmly rooted in reality. It's pulling us toward something else, and doing that kind of work is going to help ground you a little bit more.
I think that's a helpful word. With ideals, you can't see ideals. They're, in theory, they're in the future,
right?
Or they're in your head. They're in your those romantic visions of how things could be, they're not flesh and blood yet. You got to make those real.
Right.
Connecting to others through things that aren't yet real. That's a hard task sometimes.
Right. And for ones, the doing that work of processing and better thinking about like what is my responsibility and what is the responsibility of the people around me, and what parts of these relationships broke because I am idealistic.
Mm-hmm.
And just, coming back to the ground a little bit.
I've used the word a handful of times. I hear it used for 4s all the time, that 4s are too much. But it seems to me that 1s and 7s can be too much in very, very similar ways.
Right. It's just, we demonize too much emotion more than we demonize most other things.
Yeah.
So
that's it. So then for 4s, balance is going to look like engaging their body. There's going to be something of the ideals not being met in your relationships means, well, what does it mean? How does that work for 4s?
I mean, I think it has. We're talking about the sense of abandonment with 1s, 4s, and 7s, and I think with 4s, oftentimes because of that idealistic vision, the abandonment has so much to do with the ways that 4s push people away. And like I am alone because nobody understands me, and I push people away because they don't live up to this idealistic vision. They won't engage me to the depths that I am expecting. And oftentimes that sort of abandonment is actually it's much more a feeling than it is something that happens to you. And it's not that people are leaving you, it's that you feel alone in this space because you feel like nobody sees you. And so that like engaging that body, bringing up that repressed center, it means you have to, you get to move toward other people. It like if you feel like you're alone, then maybe you should go somewhere where you're not alone. And 4s so
Right.
easily spend, like they're very comfortable being in that alone space because, this is what's real. This is an accurate representation of how I feel. But shoring up that repressed center, shoring up that body and that action centers, it gives you permission and encouragement and steps to take to do something about your situation instead of just ruminating on how you feel about it.
Okay. I don't think I ever think of 7s being alone, but I bet you 7s can see 7s as alone.
Right.
We've talked about this in the past, that a lot of 7s unfortunately really can wrestle with self-harm and suicide and when things break. And
Right.
there's something about that side of the 7's loneliness that it needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
And apparently it's about engaging your feelings.
Yeah. Well, and there's like, if you're always on the move, you're going to have a hard time finding people who are always going to be with you, And so like when relationships break, when that separation happens, it's almost like you are the one that's actually running away from this. And engaging the feeling center has to do with becoming more comfortable, learning how to sit in the discomfort, learning how to stay instead of running away from the place where people are not meeting your ideals, and to not abandon your own heart. Like all of these feelings coming out of lack for the relationists, their feeling sort of pushes outward, and this sense of abandonment pushes inward, but it's also directed inward. So like 7s are almost running away from themselves. 4s are sort of like running away from the connection of other people. 1s are sort of running away from the doing things with other people, and 7s like. It's almost it's the most clear with 7s that they are abandoning their own feelings and the connection that they have with other people because they don't want to be in the hard places. And so working on that feeling center is about becoming more comfortable with the connection, with the harder stuff, with the things that aren't fun and aren't great, but are necessary for good connection in relationship.
Yep. There's something about that. I'll just do it myself. Maybe that's more the ones, but I can see that in a different kind of way going with 4s and 7s as well.
Right. I'll just do it myself is good for 1s. I'll be fine by myself is good for 4s. I'll go by myself is good for 7s.
There it is.
Yeah.
That's exactly how it works. Bang. Big idea here. Doing stance work, elevating your repressed center. Those are all buzzwords. I realize it as I'm saying it. Those are buzzwords, but getting your head around this idea, super valuable, important. And we've spent a lot of time on previous podcasts, again, specifically in that steps series, just talking about tools that will help you elevate your repressed center. And if your repressed center is elevated, it's going to be a fantastic place to be in re-engaging relationships.
Right. This is a good place to pause and continue this discussion next time. We'll pick up with the pragmatists 369 and the dread that arises in lack. We'd love to engage with you on Twitter or Instagram if you have any thoughts about this episode, and you can always find links to those and our other material at aroundthecircle.org. There you'll also find a link to our Patreon, which can help you connect to our online groups meeting every other Sunday. Of course, we love stars and reviews, and the best way you can help us with our podcast is to share this with someone you love. I'm TJ Wilson, he's Jeff Cook, and as always, who you aren't isn't interesting. Be who you are, and you'll set the world on fire.